Great, well, first thing up is approval of the previous month's minutes. I was not here. Thank you so much, Catherine, for leading that meeting. From somebody that was here, do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move to approve.
Thanks. A second? It looks like Catherine's seconding. So, minutes from last month approved. And I'm not sure if I need to sign or Catherine does. I think it's okay what I do. I don't know. Let's do that.
Sign, that's for
And then if not, we'll, we'll read it. Hey, yeah, of course.
Oh, there's Susie. Hi, Susie.
Hey, Susie.
I'm always
Okay, so it does not appear that we have any of the members of the public here. So we'll move on now to
Just looked under
to new business. And Catherine, I think you volunteered to do our monthly icebreaker, so thank you.
Sure, yeah. Hi, everybody. I hope you enjoyed Thanksgiving if you celebrate, and a little time off even if you don't, hopefully. And one thing my family does every night at dinner, we do a quick little check-in. It's a rose, a thorn, and a bud. Metaphors, of course, for the English teacher. So I was just going to invite you to share, kind of reflecting at year's end, a rose from your year. If you'd like a thorn, you don't have to. That might not be what you want to say, but either way. And then a bud, something you're looking forward to in 2024. So I can go first, or someone else, if you feel so moved, can go.
I think if you don't mind, like, give us a moment.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, let's see. I put this in my holiday letter, actually. My rose from the year was this, like a dorky law school thing, but the Held versus State of Montana case. Did any of you follow the kids who took on the state of Montana? Montana has a constitutional right to a healthy environment, and kids sued the state because the state was giving a lot of deference to extractive industries, and so they sued the state saying, hey, you're not protecting the environment for our futures, and they won. So it was a big deal. Yeah, it was a long time coming. You know, some of the kids were like 2 when the case started, and of course there were many different stalling tactics along the way. So they're like, some of them are adults now. They were youth when they, started out, but I just found it really encouraging, and I'm getting involved in the, it's called a Green Amendment, so trying to have a right to, a stable climate, etc. I'm getting involved in a movement to try and get that on the Colorado ballot. So, it inspired me this year. And my thorn was definitely getting COVID twice in a row this fall. That was torture. And my bud is, I'm going to be quitting teaching this spring. So my last semester of full-time teaching in the classroom for is going to be this spring semester. So, and it's like a kind of a bud, and we also do a fungus, something you're dreading. You don't have to do a fungus, but it's sort of a bud and a fungus for 2024.
Thank you. That's a great question. I've heard of rose and thorn. I've never heard of bud, and I like fungus as well. Okay, I'll go next. Rose for us, just on a personal note, we've been working on our backyard for what feels like forever, and finally got the deck in, got some grass in, so it's functional. So that was a big rose. I'll say a thorn was the results of the Longmont ballot measures, funding for the library, as well as I was really hoping for the Performing Arts Center, and a bud to look forward to is just, hoping for some good travels and get back into hiking this year. So looking forward to that. And I'll pass to whoever wants to go next.
I'll go next. So for going off of the travel, probably that would be my big rose for the year. Was I got to go to a couple countries, which is the most I've ever done before. So I was glad to be able to have those experiences. Thorn, I'll repeat Catherine's, I also got COVID twice in a row after. Yeah, so that was no fun this year. And then probably Bud for next year is I'm having friends reach out from out of state saying that they're gonna come visit, so looking forward to that for next year. So.
Thanks.
I can go next. I don't know who all is in the room, but I'll go. So my rose is, I was selected by the city council to be mayor pro tem. So I was very excited about that.
Wow.
Yeah, I was like, yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thorn is, right now I'm at home with a respiratory infection. My eye is actually better. This morning, it was just a little slit and it was really swollen. So I think all the, with the antibiotics, I'm kind of flushing it all out. I have not been this sick since COVID, and it's been lingering on for about 3 weeks now. So, and my kids, I had 6 out today, 7 out Friday, and yeah, it's bad. so the sickness stuff, that's a thorn. A bud. So my daughter is, she lives in Phoenix. She's actually decided to study law. So she had stepped away from school. She decided to go back. So she's just going to she's going to the community college there, but she'll be transferring to ASU next year, and she's studying law. So that is like, I'm living vicariously through her right now. I'm very proud of her. So she's overcome many obstacles, and I'm just proud of the young human being she's become. So yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to.
The few of us left are looking around
And just
now.
just so y'all know, you can't see who's in this room is myself, Cynthia, Jamie, John, and Tracy, as well as our Longmont public media representative. So that is who you were talking to.
Go ahead, Tracy.
Sure, I'll go next. My rose and thorn are kind of in the same package because we've had car troubles for the last, I don't even know how many years. And our last car, which was a Subaru, which should have been really good, but we got it from Pennsylvania and it had a lot of rust, unfortunately, kind of just quit on us. And so I commute from Fort Collins. It's definitely a need for us to have a car, so it was a big struggle in the moment. And my dad blessed us hugely by just buying us a brand new car. So that was a huge rose for us this year, finally, to not have to stress about that. And so it was just a huge blessing and not have to worry about it. And then Bud, I would say, is just going to actually visit family this next year, and then also celebrating my mom's 60th birthday and my grandma's 80th birthday, all in one kind of big party. So looking forward to those.
I'll take the plunge, why not? I'm in a weird headspace tonight, so this is actually challenging me. It's interestingly, it's an exercise that my family has done for probably 10 years at least around the dinner table, and we still do it. And we come up with our own stuff to add too, which is funny. I'm used to doing it about my day, so when I think about the whole freaking year, my gosh. You know what? I got to do a lot of neat stuff this year for the first time, like try different things, volunteer in different capacities. I'm not making this up. I think that being a part of this board and a part of this work and my work with the Friends, and I volunteer in the Central Elementary Library, like those have definitely kept me afloat and connected me to something that I have a passion for. So yeah, those were highlights to my year. Getting to participate in an election in the way that I did, actually, I think I was more informed about the issues and the candidates and everything going on in Longmont and Boulder County than I'd ever been. I mean, this is my second year in Colorado, so it took me a minute. My thorn, I also tried to do some neat stuff that didn't quite pan out. So my thorn is going to be tied to my bud, in that I am hopeful that the next year brings new opportunities and kind of new paths for me. That's it.
Okay, I guess that leaves me.
Yes, it does.
And just as a reminder, we're always welcome to pass.
No, it's fine.
Totally, yeah.
So, in all cases, this is all very personal for me. I mean, there's certainly work things that are tied into this. I think everyone, or at least most everyone, knows that when I started here last year, my wife had passed away a week before. And so Rose? I mean, you know, I've made it through this first year, I guess, is my Rose, you know, I mean, and a lot of that has to do with Longmont and the people here, and everything about it, you know, has kept me, my family, of course, my wife's family in particular, actually. So, you know, I try to keep a positive spin on things. That's something that came from Lori, if you knew her. So my thorn is that she's still not freaking here. So, you know, that's going to be my thorn every year for as long as I can see. It goes without saying. But my bud is I'm still here. I'm talking to everybody. I did make it through a year. I wasn't really sure what this first year was going to bring, if I'm honest. So I'm here to tell about it, and in this year I've done some things for her. I've spread some ashes in some places that I wanted to do for her. So, I'm holding on to those things that keep the good memories there.
Well, thanks so much, Catherine. Thank you all for sharing. I really wish that we were sitting around the table, if you drink, having a drink right now, rather than continuing on with business.
No,
But
definitely.
I really appreciate the question and everyone's responses. Okay, let's see. Moving on. The next item I put on was I wanted to talk a little bit about sustainability in the future, and I think that this can be a continuing conversation, so of course we don't have to have it all right now. But I wanted to pose the question is what is going to be sustainable for the library going forward? And I'm thinking particularly in the short term, now that we know the will of the voters with that ballot measure earlier this year, as well as learning that the budget will stay the same, which in my mind is a cut with the collections budget increasing. I think that in my time on this board, I've just been blown away by the commitment of the staff here and how much they're doing. And you know, John, from our conversations, burnout is a concern I would have, just because there is so much that everyone here is doing. So John, I don't know if you have any thoughts on this. And like I said, I just hope this is a continuing conversation. And Susie is our liaison, and I was gonna ask you a little later during your report, but if you're, I'm not sure if you'll continue to be our liaison in the new year or not, but just any ways that we can get this information to council that there might need to be some things that change in the short term. But John, I'll pose that to you first, because I'm not sure if that's actually the case.
Yeah, Noelle, I mean, I think it is. You know, the staff here, long before me, have just been tremendous in what they provide at a level that's way above what I think anything is realistic for a staff of this size, for the city of this size, honestly. And everyone just works tirelessly. And that's with, you know, programming and services we do, And I don't know, I mean, for the benefit of retaining good staff, and not burning them out, I don't know, at least going forward in whatever it's gonna look like, certainly in the next year, and maybe beyond, if we can really sustain that without losing good people, and what does that look like? I don't have exactly that answer. I could, just thinking about the sheer number of programs that we do in a year between children and adult, and outreach, which I'll talk to specifically in a second, but I don't know. We may have to really take a deep look. That's something I'm talking with my leadership team here, and really prioritize and make some a previous boss of mine would call forced choices. So what do we prioritize, and what can we let go, at least for now, in order to maintain sanity here? I think people have plugged along all along thinking there's some future here of support, and it was twofold, right? The voters had a say, and then the city didn't do anything for my budget. So, it's like the knife was turned a little bit, so that hurts. For outreach specifically, and I probably said this before, but it's a department of one, and my priorities for my budget requests, as well as the election, were to support that new department and really get out there in Longmont, and continue to make the difference that Lillian is making. And you'll get to meet her at some future meeting here. She'll come here if you haven't met her. But she's fantastic, but that candle's burning. And so I'm talking with her probably more than anybody in this kind of prioritization and forced choices, like what needs to go, so that it's something that she can continue to do without burning completely out, and we're left with nothing, which would even be worse. So these are things on my mind in that sense, when I think of sustainability. Some is going to be a matter of fact collections you brought up, and I see your hand, Catherine, just one second while I ramble. With collections, the biggest thing there, and that I tried to budget for, is when I started here, we were just starting in pre-processing materials, right? We didn't do that before here. We had staff that did all the physical labor of jacketing and stickering books. Now we pay for it as a part of getting the books in, which is still a way better decision because it gets materials on the shelves much faster. It streamlines everything regarding that. However, that comes at a cost. So without a budget increase to collections, it effectively means a cut, because we have to pay for that pre-processing through that collection budget. And that's across the board.
Right.
So that'll mean less adult books, less children's books than we've had in any year previous, until we can get that resolved. And it may not be immediately obvious to a lot of people, but think about, for sure, things that we would normally do, like a top selling author that has a new book out that everyone wants, that we would probably buy a minimum of 10 copies of. We're probably going to have to cut that in half, or maybe just buy a few and rely on the consortial borrowing to fulfill that. So that'll hurt at some point. Okay, Catherine.
This is just a quick question, and Susie, you might know the answer, but prior to you meeting and getting the information that your budget was not being increased, did our letter go out to council?
Yeah, I sent the letter out. Sorry, Susie.
Right.
And I mentioned it as well during our council conference.
Okay, so our passion plea fell on deaf ears. All right.
Well, I mean, it's a process. It's a process. So we cannot just we had our organizational meeting. So we had the election. We had our organizational meeting where we were assigning positions, for liaisons, and so the last meeting we had where we did the reorganization, there wasn't any major business to be conducted. And then this last one was just kind of filling in past ordinances and readings that we had to hear prior to the election that were on the docket. So I'll continue more during my council update. But I don't think it fell on deaf ears. It's just going to be a process in how we can relook at things. And really what's going to come up to council for a vote. It sounds like right now a lot of the stuff was, and John, you can correct me if we do have something we can kind of get in there. I think if we look at reallocation of funds, I don't know if we have all of council's support on that, but a lot of it is Harold.
So Harold decides where this is.
When we've already voted on our budget, so then there's reallocation of funds, there's, what is it? There's a word for it, it's not reallocation of funds, and it's escaping me right now. I'm taking a lot of cold medicine, so
I'm totally empathetic, sorry.
Yeah, so, I've had conversations, it sounds like, there's some things that are organizational, and there's some things that will come to us as a policy. Does that make sense? And I'll get into more detail when I bring up my council update, because I have some ideas.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify in terms of John's sharing,
Yes.
his feeling about it, that we were given a hard no after they read our letter.
No, there was no hard no. There was no, they took it in.
By Harold, though. I mean, the letter never went to Harold, or Harold didn't get, I don't know. I'm just curious about the timeline, kind of how it all.
So I will share, and then John and Susie, please let me know if I'm wrong. My understanding is that the budget news was communicated prior to our meeting, and then thank you all for working on that letter. I sent that out after y'all met. I CC on my communications, so I sent it to council, and then I CC on the city manager. I'm gonna get the title wrong, the assistant city manager, as well as the head of his department, so Jeff, just kind of as a matter of course. And so it sounds like to me that just nothing changed right after that. Am I getting that timeline correct, John, as far as you know?
Pretty much. I mean, the only slight difference there as far as Harold and the city goes is I believe I had met with him before the letter went out, and that's when I was told that my budget wouldn't be changing. And just to echo what Susie was saying, the budget had went to council as it was without any changes to the library that was voted on. And so me coming to Harold after the election is after hoping that there was something that could be, well, I'll use Susie's term, reallocated, because I don't know either. But, and that's where I was told that there's really no movement there. And then I believe your letter went out after that. Now, I haven't received any communication, at least personally, from the city or anybody in that sense. And then, as Susie stated, they haven't had meetings where they could address that yet anyway.
Hey, well, thanks for clarifying that. Thanks for asking that question, Catherine. I think it's good to know that timeline. Susie, I think that we'll just continue. Like I said, I think this is an ongoing conversation. I'm thinking towards our next communication to council, which is probably going to be, I'd like it to be at least early spring. What format that is, I think we can decide whether if it's a communication like we passed last time, council invite to be heard, or so on. But I think that whatever our next communication is, and that's, our scope as an advisory board is to make that communication, that I think it could be based on this continuing conversation. It's really easy for me to suggest that, services be dropped because I know the nature of this work, that if you're not doing something, somebody's missing out. I know it's the same across education as well. And since I'm not an employee here, it's easy to say that from the outside. But I just really want, as far as I'm concerned, I want John to know also that he is, I'm not going to speak for the board, but he is my support in that, like, sometimes things need to drop if they're not being supported, which is a really hard thing to say. And so I just hope that, like I said, this can be ongoing. So I plan to add this to old business when appropriate in the next few months.
May I add one
Yeah.
thing? Speaking in my role as liaison to the Friends of the Library, I've been thinking about this question a lot, certainly, you know, from before the election really, and then all the way up through till now. And I just came out of a weekend where, you know, the Friends were putting on their quarterly or seasonal book sale, and volunteered quite a bit. I love doing that. It gives me joy. It puts me in contact with the community, sort of fills my cup with this kind of work. And because of what happened with the election and with the budget, I was so acutely aware of not only how much work this group of volunteers does, but the not sustainable nature of it. Specifically, you know, I can say more about the Friends when that part of the agenda comes along, but in regard to library sustainability, the amount of money that the Friends raises for the library and what it covers, i.e. operational costs, program costs, I would be very, very sad to hear that any council members or anyone with the city thought, oh, well, the Friends fill that gap, so we don't have to try harder. This is a group of largely folks over 60. I've sat around a table with the board members and heard them talk about, you know, how one bad fall may take them out of volunteering. So in terms of legacy planning for that group, you know, they have their own work cut out for them in terms of recruiting members and some other organizational stuff. However, the fact that we're all relying on this group of volunteers, it's so physically laborious to go through those, collect those donations, sort them, get them up here, put them out, move them around, get them out of here. It's a little, I'll just be transparent, I'm a little ashamed that our city is okay with this. It's quite a big chunk of what keeps the library going and allows for all of these wonderful, innovative programs that we do offer. Going into next year, if we're not going to, the other thing is that it's not reliable, right? You can't predict how much money you're going to bring in a given month or a given year from selling the used books or the bookshop. You can estimate, but you can't really know. So you can't really budget for what the Friends are going to bring in. So going into next year, I would just like to revisit the aspect of the conversation that I may have missed before I joined, which is around what fundraising avenues are available to us. Because we are under the city, I don't know how that works. Are the Friends the only avenue that we can use? What would be involved in setting up a foundation? On and on and on. What are just the options? Even if they will require work, I would rather think of a way to put some energy toward that. Because I feel like we run the risk of going off a cliff. If something, it would not take much to derail everything that the Friends is doing right now. And in that instance, I fear that the library would be in a very tricky position.
Thanks, Jamie. I really appreciate that context, and I think it's incredibly important to keep in mind. There were some brief conversations. Catherine might have a better memory of looking into what is a foundation for the library? Why don't we have one? What does it take to set up? I can look back. Tracy, I might need your assistance, but I can look back at some of our notes. I think that should be a good conversation to have in the spring. I'm also interested to hear about how the museum fundraising is going. And I just want to add from my perspective as well, it is amazing what the Friends have provided. You talked about, that there might, like, one bump could derail that organization. I'll just add, I think it's really important for the library to be making the calls who is coming, who is not coming, what speakers are coming, who is not, and not having a volunteer organization make some of those decisions.
I don't think they are.
Don't we have to, I mean, they always say yes so far, but don't you submit requests to them for purchase?
If we need funding,
Or,
yes, they have to approve it and
Yeah.
the funding. To my knowledge, it's never been.
it's never, no, right.
But technically, you're right. So if we need funding for an author to come in and for some reason the Friends didn't have it, or for,
Or disapproved of it in some way,
something,
right?
then we would either have to find a different way or not proceed. That's
Right.
technically true.
Yeah, so I think,
And I just know for the Friends
yeah,
part, because I go to all their board meetings too, is they just want to help this
Yeah.
library.
Yeah.
They want to say yes to as many things. The only reason why they might say no is if they didn't have the money.
That's the only reason
Yeah.
I can think of, yeah.
yeah.
I mean, they're willing to support things financially that really they
Yeah.
shouldn't be,
Yep.
and I think about the hours they put in and that it's free labor, and
Yeah.
I don't want to take advantage of them either,
Yeah.
right? But yeah, you're right, that boundary is a little,
It's a little shaky. I mean, not with this
Funky.
group, but I'm thinking, in the future,
Right.
Yeah,
turnover.
right, what if the Friends did change over?
Yeah.
That dynamic could change,
right,
right? Because there is some power in having the purse strings,
yeah, yucky.
technically.
Yeah, and anyway, we'll talk a little bit more about thanking them, I think, once we get to the reports and information items. Before we move on for this agenda item for now, John, is there anything you'd like to add, or is there anything anyone else would like to add?
For me, I think for this current meeting, I think I've said what I wanted to.
Thanks. It looks like, yeah.
Yeah, just curious to clarify, when I first started, we also had kind of like another staff member, and it sounds like we sent that person the letter as well. But I was wondering with maybe some of the city processes or discussions, like, I don't know if that was like temporary to have that person sit in these meetings as staff or be a part of the orientations to bring us on, or if that's something next year that we want to have someone from the city, whether the same role or a different role, be a part of these meetings to have kind of like that understanding, or be a part of like hearing when we're contributing to things like putting the letters together or just expressing our support, or because I know it's super helpful to have John and Susie and folks from the city here, but if we maybe need another role or staff member to have a better on the city side for them to kind of better understand what the library is going through. I'm not sure if like bringing another person in would be useful in kind of making that happen, so.
Yeah,
Are you
and
thinking of Jeff? Sorry.
Yeah, I think you're speaking of Jeff, who is the head of, I'm gonna get the department
Recreation and
around
Culture.
Recreation and Culture. So at us, the museum,
He's my boss.
John's boss, the rec side, the golf courses, all that stuff. In my understanding, funnels up to Jeff. I think that's a great idea to see if we could have this conversation at a meeting he could attend. I don't know if that's a possibility, John, or.
oh yeah,
All right.
just with some notice,
All right.
Jeff, and then if it's relevant, I mean, we tossed around some ideas here and there before about maybe it was a little bit related but unrelated, but having someone from the city attorney's office here because we were discussing something very specific that where that might have been relevant. That might be also what Rihanna you're getting at, where we've kind of talked about that, or other city officials where it might be relevant to have them here, but certainly with notice, that's generally possible. I know some assistant city managers have attended some other boards and commissions when requested. So Jeff's bosses.
That's a really great suggestion. Thanks for bringing that up. So I'm gonna try to, I think we have a few things to talk about in the spring. I'll try to plan out our agendas a little further in advance so we could get the right people here for those conversations. And Catherine, I think you had your hand up.
I did. I'm trying to remember what I was thinking about. I just wanted to echo Jamie's point in terms of the reliance on the Friends and just say that for the 5 years I've been on this board, it's been an ongoing point of pain and gratitude, of course, but also just embarrassment. And why can the city not see that? I don't understand. It seems very confusing to me.
Susie has her.
Yeah, thanks, Susie. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, so, some of the ideas that I have been thinking about, and, I know that we put in for grants for mental health, for different, we have a lot of ARPA dollar coming in, opioid money, different sources or pots of money coming in from the federal and state, but predominantly the federal. But I'm thinking about opportunities where we have, not for the library, but for other departments, where it might free up some dollars. So I'm kind of, wanting to look at that, where if they put in for a grant for something that we had maybe initially thought we would be funding, it kind of puts that money, it's like, okay, well, not that it's extra money, but if a grant is covering a certain program, I'm thinking of core or leads team, how can we kind of manipulate things to kind of move funding from one source to another? And I think that would be kind of taking an avenue of general fund, where maybe general fund dollars that would be going to public safety, if they've received a grant for X amount of dollars, maybe that X amount of dollars from general fund could actually try to go towards the library, if that makes sense. So trying to create a creative approach. The other thing, and I spoke with Harold about this, and I was very upset with the idea of cutting children funding. And, not to punish adults, but it was really adults who made the decision that they don't want to fund the library. So I think, okay, and, it's hard because people who have participated, I saw in some of the pictures, friends of mine who took some of those classes. I think there was one that was like little books, the earrings, or one class, so there are people who are passionate about the library, who want to attend and participate in these programs. But I'm thinking of the two, it's our youth. I mean, when I had a chance to have a debrief with the youth council, they were very disappointed to hear about the library. The performing arts and the library, I think, were the two that they were most upset about. That, the library serves as that great equalizer. People who don't have access to books or don't have access to quality technology. And it's usually our low socioeconomic status individuals. And I see what it will do to our kids in the future. Right now we're trying, one of the things I talked to Harold about after that incident that happened at Countryside Mobile Home Park, the drive-by, I don't know if you all heard about that. 3-year-old. Yep, those are our families that go to Indian Peaks. So The next day, we were hearing, the next couple of days, even today, kids are traumatized. So what are some ways then that maybe we won't have a brick and mortar facility, but how we can create some kind of library, mobile library? And I've heard that idea kind of be thrown around before, but maybe let's look for a resurgence of that. And how we can set up satellite stations. I'd really like to see one in that community room over there at Side Village. I'll run it. You don't have to pay me. I'll do it. But so kind of getting a little creative where maybe it's not as expensive to oversee as opposed to building a ground up brick and mortar branch, but how we can get these services out to community and really keep the youth portion going. And then, I'm still talking to Harold about, okay, well, if we get this money, for public safety, or if we get this money for, open space, or how can we kind of free up some dollar that could make its way back to the library? I think the capital campaign, I was trying to look up, the last numbers I got for the museum was 6.5 million, and that was as of November 6th, so that was prior to the Colorado Gives. Okay, so I'm sure it's more now. But, and then looking at how we can create a foundation. That would be another option where people who really want to see this can help contribute.
It's tricky, right, Susie? I hear you on the grants front. My mind was kind of going in that direction too. And I work for the county, and I don't know if you know, following what's happening to the county budget, and public health got slashed, and we're trying to figure all that out right now, heading into next year. But there's always the conversation where I'm working right now around grants, and that you can't really count on that long term either, because there's no guarantee. If you get a grant for 3 years, 5 years, there's no guarantee that you're going to get that grant again. So I would worry about, reallocating money from like the police or health and safety, public safety, and that would be awesome. And what if that department doesn't get that grant again? Would the library have to give that money back? So that's one question with that piece. Also, I don't know, John, I've worked in libraries where a lot of the youth programs beyond story times cost money.
Yeah.
And that's how the library could fund craft and musicians and puppets and all of that, is like, it was $5. And I think that would be a really sad direction for this library to go to, because of the accessibility, inclusivity angle. Yeah, it's just so hard.
Yeah, thanks for those points. Catherine?
Okay, maybe I'm just being stubborn. But I feel like even having this conversation is just letting the city off the hook for not providing a basic service it owes to its citizens for the tax dollars we put into the pot. And I 100% believe it's a responsibility that a city has, similar to education and preschool and all the things we should be providing for children as part of their education, but also for adults and for all the reasons we all know. And I just feel like saying we should have a nonprofit pay for, it's like saying we should have a nonprofit provide us with our water, or our power. This is a city, this is like, in my mind, is the same thing as a utility. It's a responsibility government officials have to its citizens to provide a functioning library. And we've been told by the city's own study that we're not doing that. So I love how creative you all are, but I just feel like, no, they should fund the library.
I agree with you too, Catherine. That's in another reality where everything made sense. The Friends would be fundraising for all of these expansion and innovation ideas, a mobile library, satellite, And the city would pay for the things that the Friends are paying for, right? Because your friends,
Yeah.
the other Friends groups I've worked with, they raised money to further the mission, not to just kind
Fulfill
of
it.
meet the day-to-day.
Right. And the city doesn't want to lose the library, its crown jewel that everybody loves. They won't let us become a district, but they won't fund it. It's kind of one or the other in my mind. You can't keep saying like, hey, you can't go be a library district, we love you so much. And then it's a bait and switch, like, we love you so much, yes, please stay, but we're not going to actually fund your programming.
I think that one of the points that I would like to continue to raise with the city is exactly what you did, that this needs to be considered an essential service. And it hasn't been for a number of reasons. And so what is our role within this? Which I think is to continue to communicate that this needs to be an essential service. And we need to, it sounds like there's some ideas for appropriate city staff to come in to hear that as well. So I really think that those are important points that you're raising. And I would like to let that kind of set the framing of our conversations, because this is an essential service. In my mind as well, and I think in all of our minds. So, okay, well, I think that we have discussed this as much as we can tonight, but I would like to just open up one more time for final comments on this issue before we move on to our old business item. Okay, we'll continue the conversation. I was also taking notes just in terms of a strategy for next year. And like I said, we'll continue in 2024 with this as appropriate. Right. Action plan update is our only old business item, and I'll turn it over to John for that.
Okay, so I won't fumble around and bring up the dashboard. I'll just talk through the action plan, where we stand with that. So a couple of items on there that I wanted to do this year was form a couple of committees, one of selectors. Those are the various staff that actually do the purchasing for our collections throughout the library. Many libraries do this in a centralized form, but we have it throughout each department. So children's staff choose children's books, adult staff choose adult materials, what I should say. Anyway, I formed these committees to create a little more cross-departmental knowledge of what's going on with selection, but also some larger items within selection in particular that impact the library overall. And the biggest thing that's come out of these meetings of recent is really discussing challenges, right, to our collection, censorship kind of stuff that this library, fortunately, hasn't really faced too much of. At least since I've been here. However, you always need to be prepared, and what we've discovered as a selection committee is that our process, even down to the form that someone would fill out and submit to challenge an item or items in our collection is a little bit out of date and needs rewriting. So there's been some real good progress in this that'll continue a little bit in rethinking about how we approach this. And in some ways thinking about worst case scenarios so that we're prepared to handle something a little bit better than we are now. I'd rather be set up for that. So we've been doing a lot of research into other libraries in Colorado, in particular on how they manage challenges, and kind of taking note of that and seeing what we want to implement here. And just to give you a couple of examples, currently here, anybody can challenge something in our collection. And I say that because many libraries restrict that to being minimally a resident of the city that we serve, or the what we would call in library land service population, right? Because if in Longmont it's easy, we serve the city of Longmont because we're a municipality. If you are a county or a district, it would be different. We don't really have anything written that states that we restrict that. And I feel, and the committee feels strongly that we really should, in that sense, if you really want to go as far as to question something in our collection or programs that we do, or something even on display, you need to live in Longmont. And then other items too, like should we take that a step further and require that they have a library card as well? And many libraries do this, and many libraries require both now. Some libraries are taking this even in a completely different direction, and they've taken away any form you fill out, and if you want to challenge something, you have to have a one-on-one meeting with the director. And you have to prove that you read the book, or whatever it is. So interesting how other people are approaching this. So I could go on. I just want to let you know that's one of the results of that committee that I think is really good for this library and Longmont. I mean, we obviously talked about other things selection-wise, but a lot of it is data-informed and how we are choosing what to take out of the collection, what we should be adding, and having common practices and how we evaluate that, which we don't have. Like, from what I can tell, and that's another benefit of forming this type of thing this past year, is to realize that, you know, what maybe, for example, children's staff do to evaluate what they need to keep or remove from the collection might vary very differently from what adult services does. And in some case that might make sense. It's going to be different removing picture books, for example, as opposed to mysteries, right? You know, your criteria might be different, but there's also some commonalities. Anyway, that was a long explanation of that. The other committee I formed was for programming, so we could talk about, and again, cross-departmental within the library, but even bigger than that within recreation and culture, thinking about cross-departmental programming. What are we doing as a big department? We haven't really touched that level, but at least in the library, really having a better understanding of what everyone's doing with programming, where we even internally could do cross-programming, adult and children, right, in particular. So sharing ideas like that, but a couple of big things that have come out of this committee was really in how we promote our programs and how we get that out. So one of the first steps we did is the recreation, of course. There's the camera. You know, you've all seen this, you probably get it in the mail, the rec guide, right? So the library has not had a presence in here in a number of years. So one of the first things that I wanted to do is make sure we have a presence. So now we have a page. And you know, it's a thing, right? Just people get this and they need to know what's happening. And it's one page, so it's obviously not everything. But we talked a lot about prioritizing what would go in here, and so we'll be in here going forward. And then the second thing, and this will involve sharing, so bear with me, but internally, we wanted to create a new brochure. What we do now, and can you online see my screen and this cover page?
Yes, I can see it.
Thank you. Okay. So right now, and a lot of you know this, you know, for the public, they come in and if they're at any service point, we always have a paper calendar of events.
Right.
That's great. People love it. They take it home. They ask for it. I wanted something where someone can grab one thing that has all the calendars of events, but also promotes other things going on in the library. So our wonderful marketing person worked with us in the programming committee and made this brochure, which should be out. In fact, it should be delivered here, I think, next week, Tracy, right? Because we put in the order for professional printing services. So this is almost like our own little library-specific rec guide. You can see my magazine again. Anyway, but it's just for the library. They convinced that I should have a little from the director, which I
Absolutely.
resisted completely, but whatever. So
A ghostwriter for you.
it's there, and that might have been partially ghostwritten anyway, but it doesn't matter. So we have really good stuff here, like what's new, everything, a lot of stuff's QR coded. You you can just see how this is going to look. So it'll be sort of like a little booklet, right? Someone can grab from any desk. We'll of course take it to outreach. This is stuff that's coming up starting pretty much in January. And I'm not expecting you to read all this. I'm going down so that you can kind of see when we get to the calendar point. And what you can't see as you see this represented in the PDF here is that the calendars in this little magazine will be perforated, and you can tear these out and put them on your fridge or whatever people do with these things.
How often would this come out?
About quarterly, kind of in line with the rec guide. So this goes through, I think, April. So this is something new we're starting now. And again, a direct result of forming this committee, circling back to the action plan. So this is an outcome of that I think is really beneficial and positive. And I'm just a real fan of streamlining stuff that we produce out of here. Pieces of paper with calendars and bookmarks, and I'm just like, it makes me like nauseated a little bit. So I like things neatly packaged and everyone gets everything they need in one thing. And it looks professional is the other thing. Not that the paper calendars, I mean, they are what they are and they're useful, but something that people look at this and think they're getting something from, you know, a professional organization, not just printouts from someone's copy machine.
I love this, John. Jamie, I'm wondering if you're gonna ask the same thing I am. Go for it.
Who's paying for this?
We are.
Okay.
So it's coming out of the library budget?
Yep. Yeah.
So is there something else you have to let go in order to make this happen?
Well,
Because printing ain't cheap.
no, it's not cheap, and neither is the one page in the rec guide, by the way. So I planned enough to get through this year, which maybe isn't the smartest thing I've ever done. But I will figure it out next year. We have a budget for this. We have a budget that covers like advertising and marketing, and we haven't really always tapped into it. So let me start there. So we don't always expend that. But this will go quickly. So are we going to have to give something up? Maybe, maybe not. We have some other budgetary items if we get into the details that are kind of older items that have been in place for years that we never use. Like we used to send magazines to a bindery and have things bound,
Oh, yeah.
like a college or a university would,
Mhm.
but we still have that line item.
Mhm.
So it's really, some of this is a matter of reallocating, like the money's there, it's just not in the right place.
Mhm.
So I'm not exactly concerned about that or that something has to go in order to make this happen.
And are there restrictions because we're the city, are there restrictions on, say, taking in revenue from sponsorships, community sponsorships, like ads?
Well, the rep guide has it, I'm pretty sure.
Those aren't free, those are paid placement?
That's a good question, and now I don't see any ads. I'll look into that. I can't speak for here because I haven't done it.
Because if you
At
can,
one of my last organizations, we definitely sold ads for sponsors. And that, in this case, could pay for it. Easy, especially for the library one. I can't really control the rec guide.
right,
That's really controlled by others. I just thought it was good to be in there because the museum's been there for a while.
yeah, library would be
It
very
just
doable.
makes sense. My next thing is I'm going to try to convince my boss to rename the rec guide the Recreation and Culture Guide.
Mhm.
Now that culture's in there, but you choose your battles and you pick your timing. We've only had one page so far. Right? So, anyway, that's something I'll explore actually, Jamie, because I think that we probably could do something like that. And if something we produce like that looks that good, I think someone would want to be in there and be a part of the library in that way. And it builds community partnerships. I mean, there's a lot of benefits to it. So, let me, I'll stop that for now, so go back to seeing everybody. Okay, a couple other things related to the action plan. So we wrote a new computer use policy, which this library didn't have. It's pretty standard. I probably should have thought to either bring that or put it in the packet, but I can do that next time. It's the group that did it really looked at a lot of other libraries. We had some form of that here before, so it's not exactly a new invention, but it kind of fell off and it needed to be revised. We needed something with the amount of computer use we get, just things that come up and how much time you get on a computer and privacy things and what the library is responsible for or not. So I will try to remember to share that here next time, but it's like a one-pager. It's gone through the city attorney's office here, and it was fine with very minor tweaks, and it's publicly available as far as printed, like for people who come in. It will be on our website in the policies section when our marketing person gets back from her vacation. So that's done. Just updating on policies was another goal this year. And then lastly, when it comes to action plan, I had a good productive meeting with the school district with a project that's been going on long before I got here on student IDs and importing those into to work as library cards effectively. And I kind of just jumped in after a while because it wasn't moving and realized there were some complications in there and some assumptions that were not correct, and which I think was causing it to not really move forward. So and also including myself, all the players have changed. So the person from the school district, Susie, I didn't know him, the person's name was Zach something, you probably know who I'm talking about, but came up with this idea at some point, and everything's in place. There's an MOU between the city and the school district. We've done test runs of importing student IDs into our system.
Right.
The glitch was the district, at least at that time, and maybe still currently, felt they needed, well, they do need, I shouldn't say felt, they need parental permission because of getting library access. But where I came in was proposing the idea of how much access is needed, and therefore could it be more of an opt-out rather than an opt-in, which is a little bit easier. And it's something I did successfully previous to here when I was in Englewood. We didn't import anything other than the ID. In fact, we didn't have a student name or anything. We just called them like student 1, student 2, so that they could have access to all our databases and everything they would need. And if they wanted a library card, they would come in just like anybody else, but it was an easy conversion. So we made some progress in that meeting. I helped contribute to a document that they started to describe the benefits and the whys, kind of in a way starting over a little bit now that there's new players, and maybe rethinking how it's approached, particularly through the school district, understanding there's a lot of things they have to consider with parents and what they know, what their students are doing or not. Understandable. So I think we're getting a lot closer now. That won't happen before the end of the year, obviously, but we'll see. We'll see. That document and the MOU is going to be taken back to some people within the district to talk about and bring that back forward and see what, if anything else, is needed in order to move this forward. And I think in particular, from the school district's aspect, is can we do this as an opt-out? Not having worked in schools, but I think that would be a lot easier, right? They have access unless you say no, right? So, and I think the district has decided, or almost decided, that this would make a lot more sense to start with just high school students because they already don't have limited access to library materials. Currently, the school district has access to ebooks through Libby, through a program called Sora, which I'm sure many of you know about. And if you are in middle school or below, it restricts access to what you can borrow, which is good for a lot of people, but the high school students don't have that restriction. They have the full collection. So it takes, if we just do high school at least to start, it takes away any conversation about should they not have access to this A versus B versus C versus D.
Oh, that sounds really promising. I think all of these updates are both important and promising. John, I also just want to, I mean, you've been here a year. Like, this is a lot of progress across the board. So, great job. Thank you for those updates. I think they're all wonderful.
The district,
Who's what?
who's going to pay for this? Is there a cost associated with this project?
There's not any cost. I mean, there's staff time cost, but there's not like an actual, someone has to pay anybody.
Okay.
It's a matter of an agreement that we can take in certain data points of students and import it into our system.
Cool.
Good question. And just one last thing on the action plan, I've met with my leadership team, because here we are in December. I see you, Catherine, of next year. So we had some conversations. I've proposed at this point that at least within the library, they go back to their departments, children, adult, tech, and circ, talk within there and think about goals they have for next year. However, I'm also thinking about doing a larger strategic planning process, which I've mentioned here before, but within the city, the museum had a pretty successful experience doing this with our very own assistant city manager, Sandy Cedar, and they felt really good about, they just spent a day on planning for their next few years. So that could impact whether we actually have an action plan or strategic plan, but regardless, we're starting to think about next year. Catherine?
Yeah, I just had two thoughts about the school piece. Are you aware of any student groups that have been like involved in that conversation?
Student groups, I'm not aware.
Okay, because I just like, I know in our school we have a National English Honor Society, and I think they might get kind of excited about the idea of library cards and promoting library access, and you might be able to get some more support that way too,
Yeah.
And then has there been any, like, in terms of parent pushback or parent concern, has that been primarily in like elementary conversations, or I'm just curious?
No, so basically, when this all came into place and they started some testing, the district decided to do some, like, a test pilot program, right, to test the importing of the data and whatever, but they still needed parental signatures, and they chose a couple of middle schools. One was here in Longmont, I don't remember which one, and the other one was in Erie.
Okay.
And they were basically having trouble getting parents to respond. So like the response rate was low. And part of that I learned too through some of these conversations is there was like a period of time where they could respond to this request to allow access, and then when that period ended, there was no option to just, like, you couldn't come in later and just say, oh yeah, I want my kid to have this. They had a period of time where they were allowed to do that. I'm not sure how they came up with that. I think in me being in a couple of meetings, I think from what I could tell, they've talked about that process, and maybe, particularly if they move to opt out, I don't think they need to have a time frame. But it gets into rules of school districts and things like that I just don't know of how they come to that stuff. There was no elementary school involved. I don't think they have any intent of involving elementary schools at this time for something like this, but yeah.
Yeah, I was just curious,
Yeah.
in terms of like the role of parents in that conversation. I mean, yeah, I've been on both sides of that. I've had my kids bring home books that I'm like, oh, okay, we're not reading that right now, or we're gonna read that together, you know? But then, of course, I'm also a huge advocate for students having access to the library, so I
Yeah,
think it's, you know, it's complicated in many ways when kids are very young, for sure, and then it evolves.
Right.
But
and I think, you know, in this case, it's, you know, the primary goal, and because all students get a device, I don't know what they get these days, they either get a tablet or a laptop or something, but, and so they have what they need to access digital resources. And there still is, you know, an aspect there of parenting of what's in there, right? You know, I mean, you can search for, you could be doing a paper on breast cancer research and find all kinds of stuff in EBSCO that I'm sure some parents wouldn't like. But, you know, it's just, it's a reality of what's in there, and different, you know, there's differing opinions. But when it comes to physical collection, this particular model doesn't give them instantaneous access to our physical collection. That still requires parent or guardian signature in order for them to check out physical materials. So it still comes back to how the public library functions, which it's the parent or guardian's responsibility for that, but we also won't allow it without that. Digital's a little different, but there's also, if we either have the opt-in or opt-out from the school district, and the parent has either agreed or not that their student can access it, so you kind of cover it that way as far as what a student might access. But again, if it's only high school at the beginning, I think there's a lot less concern. Not that there wouldn't be some parents concerned, but I don't know, at some point, as a public librarian, it's like, I don't know. I mean,
It seems to make a lot of sense to have the opt-out.
yeah,
if
I hope that
possible.
that's how they move, but.
Yeah, I don't know how those AP classes, especially the research junior and senior year one, do it without scholarly resources.
I don't know, and I feel like the district, at least from what I can tell, they're fairly limited in what they are able to provide their own students. So, I mean, it's a partnership that makes sense.
Yeah. All right, well, thanks so much, John, for those updates.
Yep.
And just to circle back quickly to the beginning, I think that sounds wonderful that y'all are also thinking about restrictions to service populations and challenges. Seems like that's a really important conversation to be had as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on, and we'll continue with John giving the report from any updates from last month.
I'll just share our programming highlights, which I like to do. It's a nice positive aspect of everything that still goes on here. What I've named our monthly highlights, right? So just going through. There we go. So some really good stuff in November. A lot of crafty things coming out of, I'm sorry, this is children and teen, if you didn't catch that. Literally making hats and gloves. This, I was gonna comment if Katie was here, because she was here with her daughter for this program. Came out with some jar of something very sugary looking that looked terrible, but they had fun. They had fun, that's what matters. Not for me. The tween stuff is still going strong, as you can see here. And then the teen programming stuff. So we're getting good stuff here. I mean, when you get 15 kids coming to Dungeons and Dragons every other week, I mean, that's, I'm feeling pretty good about that. That's that bi-weekly one here. So this continues to grow. Of course, part of that's because we have this teen librarian that started last year, so it's getting stronger as we go. We do a lot of passive programming in kids, so things that don't involve staff that people can just come in and do. So I'm sure some of you maybe have experienced this, those of you that have kids. Some numbers here, so just a little bit of data. So if you look at programs, 52 programs and over 1,200 attendees just in November. That's the kind of stuff we're doing. You can see why sometimes I worry about how much we're doing. Adult programs, Had a really good author come in. I'm not sure if anyone was able to go to that. I was not, but it was really popular. We actually had 2 authors. We had a second one on climate change. This conversation was really good. So the first one brought in over 50. This one brought in almost 50 people for an adult program. And pretty highly received. Our ongoing groups really successful. And then some numbers here. So all these different programs, and then totaling almost 200 in attendance for adult, which is pretty good, actually. They don't do, which is normal near the programming that kids and teens generally do. And then good old outreach, doing their usual, the park visits, that'll die down a little bit here in the winter. You know, this is Lillian, who I refer to often here. So she has a couple of programs at parks. In the winter, she'll plan on it, but if it's looking like bad weather, she'll cancel it. She's actually talking with someone who might be willing to donate space in the winter, so we can continue it on an indoor space. So that's other stuff Lillian does in the background, besides just delivering the program itself. But you know, we've actually had some nice days here this winter, so much to my pleasure. I love it. Anyway, so and then this is at PI, Parents Involved in Education, which is, I talked about a few meetings ago, really developed into a full-blown outreach program. It used to be basically babysitting. Now they did yoga last week. The time before, the month before, they did something with anime arts. So it's turned into something really fantastic, and a lot of attendance here, and just it's really good. Lillian's very proud of it, and I'd like to see that. Just another slide from that. She's really good about reporting these with pictures, by the way. Intercambio, who Lillian connected with, so they're coming into the library a lot more than they ever used to, maybe at all, actually. As a result of one of her outreach at Timberline, and that Timberline outreach I think was, I can't remember what the program was there, but this is what happens when Lillian goes out a lot. So this family was there, never been to the library, never has been to the library. But because of her they wanted to come, and they connected with her, so they got a personalized one-on-one tour, which Lillian does often, and no less than an hour or 2. And just going in depth on everything that's here. And of course, in most cases, just as with this family, you know, largely Spanish speaking, so that's also where it's a true benefit. And that's why we have that role, to connect with that population who really wants to learn, but needs to have that support and understanding in their own language. Just really good. I mean, this is just one family of many that this happens. But I love that she captured this. If any of you were here for the tree lighting, that was pretty well attended. Lillian was there reading stories and doing all kinds of stuff that night. So a couple photos from there, and then this is everything that happened in November. Still a lot for a winter month. December will be a lot less just because it's December, and Lillian, she spends the last couple weeks in December back with her family in Mexico, so which is just fine. It's not the month to really be out there a lot in the end. You know, so this is how many. This 649 is how, I've talked about this before, that's how Lillian tracks just interactions with people, any interaction that she has had. But they're real interactions. It's not just, I waved at you, it's she talked to somebody about the library. So it's a very real number of what's going on there. And overall November, you know, over 750 people that she talked to just in that month alone. So, you know, I'm a broken record, but you can see why outreach is a priority for me. So that's that. That's my only addition to everything I've been blabbing about for the last whatever, but that's my director's report.
Okay, thanks, John. I'm so glad that first of all, Lillian's taking a vacation.
Yeah.
And second, that I think I understand why quantitative data is important, but I don't ever want to pin success based on numbers. So it's so wonderful to have the pictures and the stories as well that really speak to like the true successes there. Any questions for John on the updates? Okay, let's move on to Friends. But before I pass it off to Jamie, I did want to share, Jamie, if you don't mind I steal your thunder here, had the wonderful idea of making sure that this group thanks the Friends for their work from the advisory board. So I have letters to each of the Friend board members that I can pass to you to sign in a moment. However, what I could also do is leave them, if they'll write, at the circ desk or wherever would make sense. Pat and Brianna, if y'all would be coming by in the next few weeks, we could do that if you wouldn't mind just signing these. But
I was
it's,
imagining I would bring them on Wednesday. Was
never
that
mind.
not-
No, that works.
Okay,
I wasn't
I'm
sure when
sorry.
the meeting was. Don't worry about it.
We could do it at the January meeting.
No, let's just do it now.
Instead.
It's the holidays. Jamie and I will just sign these. I think that works. And I wrote on behalf of the Longmont Library Advisory Board, so it's coming from all of us.
I'm
Okay.
happy to forge anybody's signature.
You can
With
send
my
it
left hand.
We'll
digitally.
be
You
there.
can put it
Yes, I,
out. Glue stick it to them.
Okay, so
In town?
yeah. So I'll pass off the update to you, and you can sign these in a moment.
maybe we'll split these? Well,
They just need a name. They just need your name on them. I wrote them all. So
okay, thank you for doing
Yeah.
that. I was all ready to order some cards, and there's just one
you're doing a lot.
less thing on my list, one thing fewer, I should say. So, yes, the December book sale. I understand that this is the first time, at least in a long time, that the Friends have done a December sale. So there was a little bit of an experimental angle to it. I think, at least in recent history, they were doing maybe 3 sales a year, and it was like roughly beginning of the year, springtime, and then that fall time. What we all observed in volunteering this weekend, this was started Wednesday night for Friends members, Wednesday evening, and then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, the sale was running during library hours. We took in less money than we had been. And so there was a question about, is the market saturated right now? Is this one sale too many? Is it timing related? Might this sale have brought more folks in during a different time? Maybe there was, when fewer things are going on in people's lives, or the weather is different. I know that the board is going to be looking at those numbers and having those discussions in the next few meetings. They have their dates already picked out for 2024, and they made bookmarks already, and those dates suggest that there will be 4 sales again in 2024, so the Friends are at least committed to doing 4 sales next year. And then 2025, remains to be seen. I believe another angle that they will be exploring is maybe at least one of those sales is more specialized. So instead of having 4 sales that are pretty much the same, you might have one sale that's just paperbacks, or you have one sale that would be more geared toward children, and maybe could be paired with some programming to have a full, robust children's event that would bring folks into the library. So those things are to be determined. Pricing, I think they'll be looking at. I've only been volunteering with this group for the past maybe year and a half. and pretty much every sale, somebody suggests raising prices for these used books, because it is definitely the best game in town, especially on the last day of the sale when it's $5 a bag day. The bags that are used are certainly bigger than they've been in some sales last year. They purchased some paper bags with branding, Friends of the Library logo, and so that's a little bit of outreach or brand awareness, but also they hold more than the flimsy plastic bags that were, single-use stuff that it was just not good on a lot of fronts. I did field a question from a Friends Board member that I would like to get back to them on, and that was, someone had been asking this board member, if I make a donation, and I want it to go to the library specifically, do I send it to the library or do I send it to the city? And so the board members' understanding was that they should make a donation to the city, and that it would go into the general fund, an earmarked fund. I mean, I have my suspicions, but I want to be able to give them reliable information. My question was, why aren't they donating to the Friends? Yes?
I have an answer.
Oh, you have an answer? Okay.
The best way for that is to donate to the Friends. It directly comes to the library. That's our only source of money that there is in no way the city can touch if it's in the library fund.
Right.
The library fund is the Friends money, basically. I mean, there's other forms of donations that can come in there. That's like the easy, I'm looking at Tracy.
Yeah,
I think that's the
100%.
easiest route. If you
Yeah.
write it to the Longmont Library, to the city, it's just a little more wishy-washy in my mind. The Friends is the best route.
That was my instinct, so I will confirm that with them.
Yeah, it's cleaner.
It's fine. It's fine for this to go on the record, but I still remain concerned, and for myself will continue speaking with this group about their efforts to increase membership and their efforts to increase non-sales and non-membership related revenue. In other words, an annual campaign, Colorado Gives, other solicitations throughout the year. I think that those, to do significantly more work in either of those two areas will require more capacity than they currently have. They are really good at doing those sales, and it sure takes a lot to pull them off each and every time. I just don't think that they have the bandwidth to take on more energized membership and development initiatives. And that frustrates and bothers me. That's all. I wish for their ranks to grow and expand with many, different generations of volunteers, and then they could have people, assigned to all sorts of different tasks. But very grateful to them for all of the work that they do.
100%.
And if there are any questions from this group that I can either try to answer or take back to the Friends, I'm happy to do that. I think having a mutually respectful and congenial relationship between library staff, the advisory board, and the Friends not only is crucial, but it's very new. It feels very new. I think there was maybe some past drama that is now really past. And we can move forward being more collaborative with one another.
Thanks, Jamie. I really appreciate your kind of keeping an eye out for sustainability, as we were talking about earlier. I would love this board to make sure that the Friends, or I'd love the Friends to know that how much this board appreciates their efforts, as well as library staff. And that also made me think, Catherine, I know a couple of years ago you had set up a kudos board for some of the library staff. Maybe it's something we can do again in the spring, just because I want to make sure they realize that as well. And I did have a question. I guess this would be for John. I was looking back in the notes. We had somebody come in, like maybe it was late spring, talking about a specific bank account, like that there was now a way to have funds earmarked. Thanks, Catherine. Happy holidays as well. It seemed like there was somebody who came in and was talking about there's now a way to have funds earmarked specific to the library. Am I just completely misremembering this? Okay. If somebody jumped on that, I was going to say great. It might just be in my head. So I will look back in the notes and see if I am imagining things. Okay, I think I just made that up. Because I didn't find it in the minutes either. Great. Any questions for Jamie about the Friends? Okay, Susie, if you have any updates to share?
So tomorrow we'll be voting on or finalizing the selections or appointments for boards and commissions. And as you know, we didn't, I don't think were there any openings this round?
Not for me.
No. It'll be June, correct? I know the museum, I'm the liaison to the museum board, and they did have openings, but nobody applied. So what challenges that we're dealing with is getting people to apply to these boards and commissions. And, I see things posted on Facebook, the applications, and it could be, maybe I'm looking for them, or because I already have those, the city page already liked and things, so it shows up on my feed. But oftentimes we hear, well, I didn't know about it. So, just trying to get that communication out to people, as well as something that I'm very passionate about is that access to language. So we have communities within our city who come in with a different perspective, but the barrier is language. So I think about a lot of my parents, their first language is Spanish. They can speak English, they can understand English, but to have a meaningful conversation, it's very challenging. They prefer, to be able to get to that higher order thinking and critical thinking. Folks feel more comfortable expressing that in their primary language. So how can we bridge that gap so we can get a more diverse pool of applicants on our boards and commissions? At this point, I'm like, I'll just be happy if people apply. So that's something we're looking through and working out to kind of expand that and get more of a diverse pool. I really liked, in the senior center, we actually have, some folks coming in with, one is not, her language is not predominantly English, but she participates in the senior services, and so we do have a few BIPOC applicants who came in, but it was interesting, like looking at some of the folks that have lower socioeconomic who are wanting to engage, but because we're on Zoom, it was really evident the lack of technology. One would call in, and the other one had trouble with the technology piece, getting the app and doing all this. So it's really interesting how we expect people to conform to our structures and how we do business, rather than us making those changes to accommodate people and meet them where they're at. So that's something that is ongoing. And I saw a hand up. I don't know, is that the whole, all of you all?
I think it was John.
Oh, it's John.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know how that shows up on the other side.
Yeah.
No,
Under-
I just wanted to say quickly, you know, when it comes to that kind of like digital literacy or digital like navigation, digital navigating, library can play a huge role in that. We already do. You know, so we already, I mean, we have a program of that in place, not for that particular purpose, but we do a class once a month, and it's specifically, we have a Spanish instructor come in, and it's for basic computer skills for non-English speakers, I mean, particularly Spanish speakers, but, and there's a whole statewide grant currently being written for a whole digital navigator program to be implemented statewide. And I'm on a committee in Boulder County that's a part of that to talk about that. So Longmont already does some stuff there in that besides the library. Anyway, I just want to, you know, I'm happy to talk to you more about that, but wow, I'm just thinking to get more engagement on this level, you know, we can definitely play a role in that to help people, whether they're on the library board or any other board or commission.
No, I think that's fantastic, and finding ways to, you know, to bring different departments together and kind of have, you know, what we all are doing here in the library and how that can support others. You know, and then tomorrow, before council, we do have our boards and commissions updates. So council, all the liaisons we share out, and I will definitely be sharing what we discussed here tonight and the importance. I mean, there's so much room to have the library be an integral part in, you know, building that bridge for people who linguistic, socioeconomic. You know, there's all these avenues that we can tap into the library resources. We just need to fund it better. So I'm gonna keep pounding. You know, maybe one of these days it'll. What is it they say that how long does a person have to hear the same message before they're all like, oh, I haven't, yeah?
7
That's
times.
library. What is it?
7.
7?
We passed that.
Yeah.
Seven or a million, somewhere in there.
Well, they also have to hear it in different places.
Yeah.
different
Yeah,
people.
yeah. Different people as well. So, yeah, I think, you know, that was kind of the big thing we're looking at right now. We have our new council member, Diane Chris, who's on board. We did make our appointments for liaison, so I'll still be on the library. If you all have me. So you gotta pick up your game, woman. And I'll also be part of the, I'll continue on at the museum as well as the arts and public places. So I kind of think that might be a cool way to kind of link those.
Yeah, you got all the cool stuff.
Yeah. Those are the fun ones, it sounds like. Thank you so much, Susie. I'm so glad to hear you're continuing as our liaison, because I think it takes a little bit of time to get someone up to speed on the functions of the library and the value of the library. So we really, I think next year we'll be leaning on your advice and expertise on how to spread this message more effectively.
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to. Thank you.
Any questions for Susie on that update? Okay, well, our next standing item is library profession news. And once again, that's just to share if there's anything happening in the greater world of libraries in Colorado, the US, or beyond. I have nothing. I'm so ready for the semester break that my mind has not been thinking about the big picture of libraries recently, besides this one. Anyone else have anything from the world of library news they want to share? Okay, well, at this point, I'll open up to any other library board comments. Okay, well, thank you all so much. Our next meeting is January 22nd, 2024. And I will call this meeting at 8:41.